Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. Ashala here, bringing you my weekly live Q&A and featuring my dear friend and colleague, Anita. Welcome back, Anita. Anita is joined my team. Myself, Anita, and Crystal are on the website, and you can book a session with Anita. She does the most extraordinary readings. We're going to get into a little bit more today about some of the specific things that she has in her toolkit that are slightly different from the way I do my readings and that I really value. So you can book a session with Anita on my website. And if you use the coupon code that is in the link below, you can access, is it 25%? Yeah, 25% discount till the end of the month. So jump on there and take advantage of that.
And thank you to those who have already booked. I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Totally. So we are actually, just so happens that we're right on the new moon in Taurus energy at the moment. And interesting, we have our first question from Laura. Hi, Laura, asking about the root chakra. Now, I just think that's so interesting that the root chakra, and I associate strongly with the sign of Taurus, which is all about the groundedness, our, the earthly pleasures, our senses, our sensory experiences, our physicality, our basically everything to do with our bodies and our security, including finances. And Laura's asking a question about how we can unblock our root chakra so that we can remain in the receiving mode of abundance and that we're comfortable in new and good fortune. So let's pull cards on that, Anita. I think that's such a good question for this new moon in Taurus time. We'll see what we each get. Unblocking the root chakra. Okay, so I'm just going to see where my... sometimes it's so hard to see. There it is. There it is. There's the spot. This way. Okay. So I've got 9 of Wands in the past, 6 of Cups in the present, and 7 of Pentacles in the potential future. Wow. Okay. So this is very interesting because it actually mirrors a little bit. I did a live with Tanya and Norma, who are friends of yours. Tanya from Adventures for Connection. I did a live on her channel yesterday about this new moon in Taurus energy. And we got this 6 of Cups card right in the center for that as well. And so what I was being shown is that we're actually going back to age, in this case, 6 or 7. And we are looking at ways that our root chakras got disrupted. We've been in a way, I want to say, quite out of our root chakras for a really long time now. This is the 9 of Wands is in the past, and it's about kind of working with energy where we're at the end of our tether in terms of how we've been doing things, and we need to gather our wisdom and experience from all that we've done and go in a new direction with this 9th wand. So you see the character here looks a little bit battle weary. They've got, a patch over their forehead. Looks like they might have taken a bump to the head. And they are, in a way, fenced in energetically with those 9 wands of their past experience, the battles that they've had to fight just to keep that root chakra, basically tethered and secured has been a lot of work. And there's a feeling of we want to change out of that modality of having to fight to keep the root chakra strong. And so if we drop in to our inner child, our youth, age 6 and 7 and look at how our root chakra was disrupted, then that's going to give us some real, I want to say, opportunities for healing and reclaiming our natural grounded energy. So as little children, we came in, as newborns, we came in with a strong grounded root chakra. And we kind of were trained to override that or disconnect from that. And we were talking yesterday a lot about how that happened when we entered the school system.
Mm.
And that literally our relationship to our bodies, like, I mean, I remember the trauma of being at that age and you had to control everything but your body. You couldn't move, you had to sit still in your desk. You couldn't go to the bathroom when you needed to. You couldn't eat when you needed to. You couldn't talk. You know, you couldn't wiggle and fidget because you'd get in trouble for that. Like you literally had to sit still and not move. And like how we had to override the natural energy of our bodies. We had to literally kind of shut down our signals between our
Yeah.
bodies and
Our own personal guidance systems. Yeah, that we have innately. And it's very intentional when we know the big picture of how it's been messed with for us.
Yeah.
But very interesting that I just want to jump in here because I was just talking about this. I was at a meditation on Saturday, and that was one of the things that came up that I was talking about. I was sharing that because the memory of it came back through the meditation experience was I used to tell my mom I was allergic to school because I felt sick every morning and never had before school, like before I started going to school. That was just the feeling that it gave me. I was fine once I was at school, but every morning I woke up with that feeling of dread and it felt like physical pain in my stomach because of the energy I was about to face. So this is no small thing, and the root chakra guides everything. I mean, every chakra is important, but that's our foundation.
It's our foundation.
Yeah.
That's our foundation. And it was interesting yesterday in the live with Tanya and Norma, we discovered that, you know, a lot of us have very few memories from those times of our lives. Some of us virtually no memory. But it's very poignant what you do remember. Like if you can sort of focus in on a memory, and they're saying, the guides here are saying 6 and 7, between 6 and 7. So that's like what, grade 1 and 2. Like focus in on a memory of what your inner child was grappling with and the ways that your inner child coped, because we all have different coping mechanisms. So, and we can go back and, you know, what we were revealing is that it's not about, oh, I'm going to go back in like the big adult hero and fix that little child's reality and heal them and be there for them. It's like, well, yes, we want to offer the perspective and the wisdom and the tools and the strength we have now, but they have gifts for us too. Our inner children had wisdom, intelligence, the way each of us, the way we coped with this is there's clues and keys in it about where the strengths of our root chakra are. And we can go back and actually communicate with our inner child around age 6 and 7, not looking at them like a victim, looking at them like an incredibly intelligent being that is doing a remarkable job of creating a coping mechanism that now we can go back and, I want to say, reclaim the strength of that wisdom and redirect the distortions that had to be worked with back then.
Yes, in my case, what I was just talking about, that whole experience again through this group meditation and what that allowed to come through was um, a, a changing of a story, because then it was the great wisdom that came through for me through that amazing um, wisdom of the young child, the innate knowing was, oh, this is the coping mechanism that you're going to use. Okay. So in life, when you don't want to do something, when you know something's wrong, you're not going to feel well. We'll honor you by creating this for you. And so it
Mm.
was a real wow, how when have I done that and how often have I done that? And this is this beautiful thing when we take responsibility for everything in our lives where we think, how can that even be? Well, we
Mm.
get these little clues that it's like deeply embedded in these past experiences, coping mechanisms, like you said, where it's like, okay, and it is a gift, but when you're ready to release the story, it's freedom and lightness to be, I don't have to do that. I can use my voice, I can express what I need in each moment. I don't need to feel unwell and go, oh, yes, sorry, I don't feel well, so I can't do that.
Yeah, right?
Mm,
And how many different versions of those coping
mm,
mechanisms,
mm,
all of our inner children designed to their unique strengths. And so, yeah, it's like this beautiful way of reframing. We're not victims.
mm,
We are, extraordinary, wise, intelligent beings. And these coping mechanisms in them are the keys or the clues to where our true root chakra strength resides.
mm.
So, did you pull some cards, Anita? Let's see
I
what you pulled.
did.
Let's have a
Yes.
look.
So the first one that I pulled was from my Archangel Tarot deck,
Yeah,
and it is 6 of, let's see how I do today.
that's it.
6 of Ariel, which is 6 of Pentacles. So it's another 6,
Another
but
six.
Pentacles to me is root chakra work because it is foundational work. So,
Mm.
and this when we talked quite a bit about sixes last week. It right away it just makes me feel comforted that
Mm.
and so what we've already been talking about, how can we switch old stories, old patterns, or these what were you saying, or reclaiming the strength? Um,
Mhm.
how can we engage with that now, where
Yeah.
we're honoring, and we don't have to know every detail, but I love what you said, like thinking of a memory or two, and start with that. Just like from the
Mhm.
meditation, just start with that feeling of not feeling well in the morning. For me, that would
Mhm.
be like a starting point that I've already. Oh, okay. So every time there's something that's a little off, I can go, oh, I can release that story. I can release that story. And
Mhm.
for this, it feels like rebuilding that foundation because we are in alignment to be able to do that now. And so I
Mhm.
pulled from the chakra deck. I thought that would be fitting. And it's another, we got crown chakra last week, but this is a different one. It's guidance. So looking from that, it looks like I'm getting that same image as I did last week as well, where when the crown chakra is open and really connected to the cosmos, that we get the downloads of information and that the guidance is there. Not only that,
Mm.
but you have that balance right then through the whole system from the root up. And it feels like a cleansing light that comes through. And especially when we're talking about unblocking, bring it straight through, send it into
Mm.
the earth and allow it to come like a toroidal field that's very protective and
Field.
yeah, and run that. So
Beautiful. Well, and I forget often that we have always you can work in chakra work with the opposite chakra,
mm,
right? Like
mhm,
the two together. So you have, root and crown, sacral and third eye,
mm,
solar plexus and throat, and then the heart is the one that everything works through the heart chakra.
mm,
So when we're thinking about this root chakra, grounding activation, reconnection,
mm,
bringing back the healthiness of that, it's directly in relation, as Anita pointed out, and as your card said, with that opening the crown.
mm,
So I wonder, like when we were little children, what we were doing was we were trying to find a way to um, protect. that root crown portal
Yeah.
so that because we knew somehow that we were going to get cut off from life force if we didn't have that root crown opening,
Mm.
right? And connection in the root and opening in the crown. So I find that really fascinating. What springs to mind about what I did when I was that age, one of my coping mechanisms was that I would, uh, everyone would call me, like a dilly dallyer. I was very, very intelligent, but I was very shy and introverted. And I would literally, on my way home from school, I lived a long ways from the school, and I would walk so slowly that it would take me like literally 2 hours to walk home. And I would go in every ditch and look like, every puddle, every tree and shrub. And I would just be like looking for little critters. I was so fixated on the natural world. I just went into, even in the sterile suburbia of the city I lived in, I found nature and I just let myself get lost in it. And, it was actually really a very courageous mechanism because I got into a lot of trouble for doing that. A lot. Like I would get punished severely with physical violence if I got home later than my dad got home from work because then he had to go looking for me and he was furious about that,
Mm.
you know? And then I had my teacher from grade 2 come and speak to my parents and say that they thought that I had some kind of psychological disorder because it took me so long to walk home.
Mm.
And fortunately, my parents were like, that's a bunch of BS.
Mm. Yay. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's interesting. It's almost like I feel like, yeah, that particular teacher had quite a lot of kind of wokeism already going on, labeling things and so on. And for sure, I was a sensitive and, an empath and a really open channel back then as well. But I was creating a phenomenal adaptation to you sit indoors for whatever it was, 6 hours or something. Basically, like I was saying yesterday, we were technically strapped to our seats because if you left the seat, you got strapped. So it's like you're being strapped to your seat. I mean, that is a form of torture, right? So we were literally put into like yeah, some form of being locked in, imprisoned
Yeah, within our own beings.
within our own beings. And we figured out ways, each of us, like I really encourage each of you, even if it was just some small radical act of reclaiming some of your authentic self through a coping mechanism, really revel in that. Take a moment to really revel because it's interesting. I'm thinking, well, that's what I do now as an adult.
Mm.
I rebel, I go off grid, I
Mm.
go in nature, and I spend as much time as I can, like literally stepping outside of the system, even if it gets me in trouble, even if people are mad at me because I didn't answer the email and I didn't get back in the da da, and I'm not on Facebook and I'm not on, Instagram and I'm not all these things. This is my way of rebelling in terms of like, I'm going to take what little time I have to myself and I'm going to literally revel in getting lost in nature. And so, talking about root chakra, like healing and reactivation, when I honor that about myself, I'm literally honoring the place that I've somehow protected my root chakra. And maybe there's a wisdom in that. Like how do you feel about that, Anita, with your example of your health and how you've used your health as a radar system?
Yes, I mean, I can relate to what you're saying, in that lesson that was there for me all the time, all along. But it was just the perspective of bringing that I was bringing to it, and thankfully, I didn't become a sickly child. But it was just that push to get out the door. And once I was at school, I was fine, and I was very social. And so, but aside from that, you identifying as like introverted. It was social, but yet similar. Still sensitive, still very much engaging in nature. It was just like others, come along. Or actually, I don't even remember saying come along. It was more like the Pied Piper. I would just like I would just do my do and others would be there. And my mom would say, "Oh my goodness, the phone calls I had for play dates with you because you would keep everyone engaged because of
Mm.
those kinds of practices, though, really engaging with nature and
Mhm.
others being drawn to that, or it didn't even have to be nature. I mean, that's lovely, and I'm thinking of Laura with her question here, reading now the layers to it, and,
Mhm.
so that I love these examples that, Ashala has put forward as connecting with these moments and how we can unravel some of these old stories or, reclaim some power. But also, if you're looking for examples, I love that you're Laura, that you're talking here about getting comfortable because this is another piece that I think we might have mentioned it last week. Preparing our vessels. Oh, yes, I was talking about lottery winners that can't hold on to the winds because the vessel hasn't
Mhm.
been prepared. So it just runs through like a sieve. So if this isn't a really important piece, a lot of it I do feel will happen organically.
Yeah.
That's what I get, but
Yeah.
it's amazing if you get that message of a blockage or something, it's great to have that goal and work on it because those that get that message, we do the work for a lot of people because we send ripples of energy out that
Mhm.
others can hold on to and grab onto. So, yes, important to prepare the vessel to be able to hold um, so whatever works for you, I really feel it's an inside job. So getting and taking what we've already talked about and see what resonates for you. Can you go get barefoot in nature, especially water? You know, a creek, an ocean,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
lake, whatever that is. And it can just be earthing. It can be on soil or
Mhm. Yeah.
sand. Yeah. So
I mean,
those things and kyanite, I will mention, I do like working with crystals, and if it comes through
mm,
for me, then kyanite is one that, aligns our chakras, so that's really helpful. Selenite clears chakras, clear quartz, so, um, weaving that into your practice.
yeah. And then with the root, I mean, if we're looking at root and crown, we're looking at the root stones are a lot of the red and the black and the
Sure.
brown stones, and crown is a lot of the clear quartz and the amethyst purple stones. So, like focusing on, like having that nice balance because it's almost like what I'm being shown is that the root will relax and open when the crown is clear,
Mm.
and the crown will clear when the root is rooted. So,
Yes.
we're like, it's almost like it's sort of like let's do them both at the same time,
Mm.
and then we will stand the best chance to come into that alignment. And then all the other chakras are going to be transformed and up leveled as a
Mm.
result of that. So I just think this is such a good question,
So good.
starting at the root.
Mhm.
And I'm looking here, I'm going to bring another question up.
Okay,
So,
while you're looking, I wanna
yeah,
quickly, talk about something from last week because I went
okay.
back over. There was one point that I wanted to say because I will be pulling when we do these lives, and we'll see what comes up. Um, but I pulled Raphael last time, and we were talking about, was it the psychic fair? And
Yes.
you were like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense with Raphael." And I did start talking about Raphael and cups representing a gut feeling, but didn't say that bridging word of yes, when you were saying that, yes, that is that connection with the psychic fair, with that intuition being on fire and really going.
Mm.
And for me, that's gut feeling because heart gets into um, a different lane for me. It more like a wand's lane, like being with your purpose and really but
Mm.
that gut feelings and cups go together with, but what is that? What am I being guided to? What action steps along the way?
Interesting you're saying that too, Anita, because again, you're talking about gut feelings, which to me I associate with the sacral chakra, which is the one up from the root, and it's basically our intestines, right?
Mhm.
And then the intuition, the psychic ability is the third eye chakra. So those two are
Ah,
also
and that was,
working in tandem.
yeah. And last week those were the two. If like we're weaving it back through. And
We're
always
weaving
we
it
can
back.
send ripples through time, just like Ashala talking about
Yeah.
healing these pockets. We send the ripples through and we do these little healing moments of going to those childhood age 6 or 7, like Ashala was saying, or like those times when we started school and finding those, reclaiming those moments, sending
Mhm.
love back through so that perspective can ripple through all our perspectives moving forward and that release.
Well, and I really like when I was tuning in with this yesterday, I got a really strong feeling that it's important that we don't look at any of these past things as victims,
Mm.
like our victim selves, that we look at, because if we see the strength, not just the courage, but the dignity of, there's an intelligence going on there.
Mm.
These coping mechanisms weren't just like, you know, I want to say like unconscious reactions. They were subconscious reactions. And they're, if buried in all of that, like there's a riddle in that. When we
Mm.
look at those things, we can see part of the strength of our design, our unique design, and everyone is a little different.
Mm.
So it actually, if you go back with curiosity and say, I've got something to learn from that little being, even if it's just an inner child, a few months old, a baby, whatever it is, you weren't, there's a perspective, you can see yourself as a victim, but the larger truth is that you are an interacting participant in a much grander story.
Mm.
And if you can see and sense the profound wisdom of that, that's where the real blessings will start to emerge, and you'll see yourself as a little hero,
Mm. Mhm.
you know, and then you can befriend that little hero because it's got stuff that you don't have anymore. Those little children inside of us, they have abilities that we've been bludgeoned down and dumbed down so much that we've lost.
Mhm.
So if we work with our strengths, what do we have? We've got the knowledge of life experience. We've got this big perspective of all the wisdom we've gathered, and we've got tools. So we bring that to them, but they've got this innate gift and connection to source and to their true, destiny, basically their unique makeup. And when we work with them, we can help them and they can help us, is what I'm hearing.
Mm. Mhm.
Okay, so how do you, Lorna BB, how do you feel about us taking steps towards sovereignty at this time when it seems we are so close to change and it will be done, or is it done already? Wow, what a good question. Let's pull
Mhm.
cards on that, Anita.
All right.
Sovereignty. It kind of goes right
Yeah,
hand in hand with the root chakra, doesn't it?
for sure. And also with everything that we've already been saying, because balancing your chakras or energy systems, or however you want to look at it, these, with it being an inside job, these are the parts of taking steps towards sovereignty. I understand, Lorna, you're asking in a somewhat of a different context, but we can always get started. When you're saying action steps, always do that inside job work. Oh my goodness.
The same card in the past.
What
You
are the
saw me
odds?
showing.
What are the
Okay.
odds? Oh my
Past,
goodness.
present. Ooh.
Mm.
And let's see, we'll put it up here. Yeah. Past, present. Edge that. Future. Oh, love it.
Mm.
Another child.
Mm. Mm.
Oh, and look at this. I just turned over. The bottom of the deck has this one, which is the sovereignty card.
Oh.
9 of Pentacles. I call that sovereignty. So I'm going to put that over top of our 5 of Cups for a minute here. So you're asking, is it done already? We're so close. How close are we really? That's that same card. That's that same card. What is already done is that we're done with doing it that old way. That cycle has come to a close. Now, interesting here, folks. Just like when, they say when you leave an abusive relationship, when a child is removed from abusive home, one of the first things that happens is they grieve. And we can say, what on earth? You should be like yelling from the rafters for joy, but it's still a loss. It's a loss of what was familiar. We spent like eons developing these coping mechanisms, these phenomenally complex strategies to deal with that sick system. And we're being told now, throw all that out. Throw it all out. And how does that feel? It's kind of sad. It's kind of like depressing in a way. It's like, holy, that is a lot to let go of. So there's an emotional component. And I've been saying for a while, we're in emotion. We were in a mental war in terms of information war on information. Then we were in a spiritual war. And people got good on the information. They started accessing truth and developing discernment and, independent thought. Then we had the spiritual war, and people got really good at tuning into their deepest core selves and saying, this is the side I stand on, regardless of what's going on outside of me. Now we're in an emotional war. It's, can we plow through all the grief that we've got to go through as these things change? It doesn't just happen overnight. There's a lot of emotion. And I feel like we're going to talk about the heart here in a minute, Anita, because the 5 of Cups, 5 is movement and chaos and growth. So we have to grow back through it's not just the sorrow of, we were victimized and the betrayal of that. I feel like we're getting through that pretty quickly. It's what was all that for? Like, what a waste of my life. That's the part I feel is really hard.
And even though, just like you were saying, with the child removed from an abusive situation, there's so much attachment to the old story, the old habits, the old emotions. And we talked about this last week as well. And I feel like this is going to be an ongoing conversation because that is part of where we're at in all these things that you were talking about, the information war, spiritual war, and that we're moving into a rebuilding phase and rebuilding starting with ourselves. And what are we willing to release? What old stories and patterns? And sometimes we don't know that we have them. So how do we find them? And you remind me, when I was one of my reflexology and touch for health teacher, shared a story with us where she had cleared someone's allergies. And the woman was so excited and just amazed. And she came back a few weeks later saying, can you bring them back? The allergies. And my mentor was just like, well, I've never done that before, but if you think about it enough, I'm sure they'll return. But she was so attached to all the old stories and the way people responded to her, the things that she didn't have to do because other people had to do it. Oh, I can't do yard work, my allergies. I can't I can't deal with the cat litter or whatever it was. In life, it just wasn't, there was so much attachment to the discomfort, even though it's the familiarity that people connect onto, that we connect onto more than wanting that sovereignty and that freedom. So
Yeah.
again, it's preparing the vessel. Do we really want it? Are we ready for it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, isn't that funny? Because invariably you get a group of, let's say, North Americans or Western, people from Western civilization together, they're going to start grumbling. It's what we do. We gossip and we grumble, right? It's like, oh my gosh. So this is a really big thing to say, okay, what are we going to talk about if we're not complaining?
Yes,
right?
yes. And this is something that my mother always said about living here, having come from Europe and living here. She's like, there's an aspect of culture that was missing. And of course, you can discuss what culture means to each uh, person, but that was the piece that she would get to. She was like, we would sit and have long dinners where we would talk about really interesting and important things, not about what was on TV and the superficial surface things. And so it's a return to when we're really discussing that the things that are going on for us on the inside. It should be fascinating, lots of conversation, amazing things to ponder, and
Mhm.
and the tools that we can use to, be helpful
Yeah.
with that and help each other. So
So we are quite far removed, those of us in North America, from those kind of meaningful cultures. Many of us are, not all of us, but many of us are. And what do we replace all that lamenting with? Well, interesting. The guides are saying, because this is the next step
mm,
towards sovereignty, we replace it with, again, the inner child.
mm,
So we replace it with just being childlike,
mm,
being childlike in our wonder. And like you said, being curious about what's going on with our feelings. Like, let's just say we'll change the topics from politics and doom and gloom and lamenting about this,
carbon
that, and
tax.
tax, whatever. Like, it's sort of like we've given it plenty of airtime.
Mm. Yes.
And so maybe when we get together, we'll talk, heaven forbid, we'll actually talk about feelings. This is reminding me, I've got to tell
Mm,
this quick little story here about I worked for a summer a few years back. I was living up north, and I worked in this really funky, cool establishment. It was a drinking establishment. It was a pub. I just worked there on weekends, and it was more or less as a favor to a friend.
mm,
But I watched this phenomena that would happen, especially with men that would come in groups, and they'd come into the pub. And at the beginning of the night, it was just all this like, rah, 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 like boasting themselves up, like me and my stuff and this, and I got this, and la, 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 la. And then as it went on, they started dissecting, their boss and their work. And they were getting really mad and like lamenting and all that kind of stuff. And then I watched this phenomenon. I don't know if it was the amount of alcohol they drank, but it seemed to happen the same time every night. It was just kind of coming up to closing time. They started talking about their homes, their families, their wives.
mm.
And the whole demeanor shifted. Like they'd get very kind of like, yeah, so what's, how's it going with so and so and all this kind of stuff. And I'd be like, wow, it took them the whole night of all of that like bravado and then the bitching. It's like first the bravado, then the bitching. And finally, they started talking about real stuff.
And
And
maybe that's needed too, the timing. So yeah, alcohol might have been involved, and that can go a whole other way, right? It can just keep going rah rah and testosterone, or
yeah,
um, even for women, it can just be a different course. But I love that you're acknowledging these of these stages, because that's what I'm getting shown as well, that those stages are important. It's relationship building. So yes, and good that you're saying this, because I do want to clarify that doesn't mean that we don't ever talk about taxes or politics, because we're not ostriches burying our heads in the sand. We are facing things head on. It's just how much time are we allotting to it? How Let's not overly dwell on it. Let's be aware, but then move into what I pulled, solutions.
oh,
Major arcana, which is
solution.
temperance, if you can see the pouring of the
Oh,
water
it's
in traditional
beautiful.
tarot.
Yeah, that's good right there.
And so that it goes through these stages. it's important releases to bitch a little, and have that release that, okay, we're getting that out. And then cut it off though. Like if you realize yourself, or if you have someone in your life who's always complaining, you might even want to set a timer. Or I sometimes check in with my husband and go, all right, have you said all you need to say? Because let's start into the solutions. Because, allowing for that space, but then let's
Mm,
get into, so what is going to be done about it? And if there's nothing to be done, then it's time to move on conversation wise.
yeah.
Or what can we do?
And
And yeah,
yeah, and talk about your feelings. If there's nothing
yes,
to be done, how are you feeling? Give
yes,
your feelings, air your feelings a little bit, you know, and if you can maybe get a little creative beyond just the top three feelings of, anger, hurt, disappointment,
mm,
fear, whatever,
mm, mm,
right? Like, is there something else
mm,
when you get beyond those? Is there something like, you know, a
mm.
little more deeper inspired? Because it feels like that's partly what we're doing. We're In order to come into sovereignty, we've got to get in touch with our truer essence of who we are, which is an emotional process.
Mm.
Now, Anita, I just would love you to speak for a minute here about one of your specialties, which I've always found the most fascinating and extremely valuable thing that you offer, and that is working with the what's called heart math. Can you just give us a quick little description of what that is and
Yeah,
how it works?
sure, I'd love to. Thank you, Ashala. It's where science meets spirituality. That's one of the sort of the taglines that have been created around it, and I love it. It's perfect. One of my favorite conferences I've ever been to was the Science and Spirituality Conference,
Mm,
because it was very much about looking at things that are researched in very rigorous scientific matter, in ways, and then connecting it with spirituality. And what it's saying is that science is spirituality.
mm,
And that is part of what has been made a very purposeful disconnect, so that
mhm.
we feel that, like, because what life science is, that's who we are, that's what's around us. And even what we've been saying about how school makes that disconnection for kids, it's that
Mhm.
it's as if everything is just running separately, and that's not the case.
It's not the
Everything is,
case.
yeah, and everything's running together. So it is important to have anecdotal pieces always with science, as well as the observations.
Mhm.
And how does that sit with us? What is our intuition telling us? What are our feelings telling us?
Mhm.
So,
S
heart math brings everything all together. And even connecting with what the spread that you have here, this makes me think of resilience. So, that's what I'd like to focus on today, is that heart math is very much about building resilience. So
mm.
when you look at a bad childhood experience, or a old pattern that doesn't serve, it's how can we build ourselves up so we're not staying in the bitching phase, we're not staying in the grumbling phase, we're moving it into solutions, we're letting go of old stories.
Mhm.
And that is getting that calm, neutral ease around things. And there's
Mhm.
different practices. A lot of the heart math in action is quite simple, in its it's simple little meditations that we can do, and little practices that we can weave into our day to day. There is a scientific aspect to it that you can get into if you have equipment. It takes equipment. You can measure the HRV, the heart rate variability, which is really variant for children naturally, and then that goes over time. So it's not like the same as a pulse, where you have a certain pulse for a certain age. We lose variability, just like we lose our divergent thinking and creativity, because it's stamped out of us. But if we can get our heart rate back to a strong variability, that is a good sign for health. It's a good sign for creativity. It's a good
Mm.
sign for building resilience. And what that does over time is that here it is, the old pattern is in our face again, and we're not reactive. We respond, but we're not in that same
Mhm.
old anger, frustration story. It's just like, oh, my boss is, not having a great day. So um, maybe I'll offer to bring her a coffee. Maybe I will
Mm,
give them some space,
mm,
or that you learn those tools, but within you're staying in that neutral zone. You've built resilience,
mm.
and your heart just supports that again through the simple practices.
So when you're speaking, thank you, by the way. Wow. When you're speaking about the science of the heart, are you referring to that? I feel like I don't know the exact ratio or description, but there's something about the heart has more brain tissue than the brain or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. Well, that's an aspect of it where we live in a society that reveres the brain and academics, and it's very much, again, that's a removal piece, a separating out of
mhm.
any aspect of us, which everything ideally is should be taken holistically. I hesitate to use the word should, but if we could embrace everything holistically instead of separating out. We can separate out to examine things and study, but then weave back in the details. So if we're looking at how the brain works, then weave in back in, okay, what happens when an emotion happens? Like that is so underrated in anything we learn. They maybe start weaving it in for kids with like emoji faces, essentially. How are you feeling today? But again, that's very surface, right? It's not like um, weaving it into daily day practice. And that's another piece that through practicing heart math, then you're just weaving it through. You've learned a
Mhm.
simple practice and you're just, oh, I'm going to find my neutrality right now. That will keep me calm and centered. And I know how to do that through breathing through my heart, through being calm in this moment. And that there's a lot of similarities to other practices, like such as counting to 10, that except for what are you doing during that counting to 10? Oh, breathing through my heart and putting my focus there. So those are
Visualizing.
yeah, so
Mhm.
those little details that make it a little more heart math aligned, but it's all these little things that we can do to weave everything back through to holistic practices.
It's so powerful. And I feel like, there's as I was saying about the inner child, the heart has so much wisdom and mystery.
Right. So getting back to what you oh, sorry. Just what you were saying. Yes, more powerful to move it from just thinking about everything, just like let's move out of swords in tarot, right?
Mhm,
And move it through our system, move it into our heart,
mhm.
because the heart brain is much more powerful, much more electrically charged. And then the brain up here. So is our gut brain, which we have a gut brain as well. It's it's like heart, brain, gut brain, and then up here. Yet we live in a society that tells us to focus all the time up here. So,
Yeah. And disconnects us from those other two
yes,
brains.
yes.
So I just keep feeling that it isn't, we have this sterile attitude around, I got to fix my heart chakra. I got to fix
Mm.
my gut. I got to fix these things so that I can get back up here and function properly. And it's like, actually, that's the first thing to attend to is not automatically thinking, let's just deal with this and get this done
Mm.
and get back to the good stuff. It's like, is this the good stuff?
Mm.
Because if we begin to attend more, like I am being shown so strongly today and yesterday, like never before, that there is our part of our reclamation and our salvation during these times is acknowledging how much intelligence has gone into, you know, whatever our bodies are doing, whatever our hearts are doing, whatever our emotions are doing. There's so much wisdom that they are steering us purposefully
Mm.
through these channels of life. And it's not, we don't need to fix them. We need to actually pay attention to them
Mm.
and learn them
Mm.
and admire them and respect them and begin to work with them. it's not like something that we got, they're bad, you know. It's like, well, yeah, we got all these gut issues. We got all these emotional problems, depression and, you know, suicide and all of these addictions and so on. And it's like, oh, we're really a mess, right? Our hearts are a mess and our guts are a mess. It's like they're actually trying to speak to us. They're trying to navigate us towards something and away from something. And to me, it feels like what's being really strongly guided right now is that if we can give that, that's the beginning of sovereignty. It's saying this, there's wisdom. It looks messy right now, but there's wisdom in how this is playing out. It's for our benefit. It's showing us things. It's not just showing us what we need to get rid of. You know, it's showing us what is ready to be healed and transformed.
Yes,
So,
if we don't do the preparatory work, like we've already been acknowledging, the vessel can't hold it. Or we get sick. Like when we think, oh, we'd love that blast of lovely energy, whether that's people will talk about the solar flare bringing, solar flares bringing those blasts through, or the Schumann resonance, and we can talk about it in all different ways and embrace those shifts. But the fact is that some people get sick, and some people, you need to detox, you need to purge, as we talked about last week, and these things come through. Our vessels need that time as much as we want to accelerate disclosure, accelerate it. We can embrace the time to do this work right now, this inner work, and how exciting it is actually when we can already look back and how much we've already done. I'm sure everybody who's tuning in here, that you're already aware of so much. And if you could look back and just look the last year, 2, 3, 4, 10, how far we've all come, even
the
though
last month,
I know last month, yeah, there's so many things that are getting pushed through now. And that's just it. It's like when we ask for it, and then it's like all of a sudden every moment feels filled. A lot of people who I'm of clients who I'm reading for and things are, and people who I know, they're talking about how full they are. Everything's booked up. There's so much going on, and that's amazing. But then back to the self-care, back to the inner work, so that we can keep doing this and be prepared for that next blast of what this month brings, and next month, because the dominoes are rolling. And something you talked about in that last spread reminded me of V for Vendetta, because it was this being freeing ourselves, realizing that the process of oppression is to realize those moments where you have been oppressed. Some things are easy to see, other things are more hidden. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was me playing small, or me not allowing that energy to flow, or listening to someone who I didn't need to listen to, because their opinion or their thoughts is none of my business. That's their issues. And yeah.
Totally. I'm about to put another question up. I think we can have time for one more here. This is Karen McLeod, and it's actually a perfect segue, of course. Can you please provide some guidance for how to productively interpret the crazy events going on in today's news? So
Today, or like just today in general? All of the news. Okay, because I'm like, I don't think I've seen any news yet today.
These days.
These days. Yeah.
Let's have a look. Let's pull some cards on that. Thank you for your questions, everyone. And I'm just going to go down here a little bit and see.
Oh, I see. Just let me see. Lorna was saying, should clarify, was asking about steps to claim our strawman account. I did think that was what you were saying, Lorna. So I do feel that was part of what we were weaving through. You can speak to what you were thinking, but well, for me, that was part of, yes, do we go through the steps for claiming sovereignty or not? That, that can be, oh yeah, lovely. Whether take the energy, I do still say what we already have been saying, do the inner work. because I've heard it both ways. Some people love that they did that. Other people don't love that they're now an island unto themselves. They still need the support of playing the game in the old system. So hope that helps,
Right.
Lorna. Okay.
Right.
So
So
Karen.
I'm getting like, yeah, you know, I
Mm.
get, it's interesting. I'm being shown, we will get, it reminds me of, I used to do dance, and one of the forms of dance I did is called contact dance. And you actually lean on other people. You do these acrobatic kind of maneuvers, but the whole idea of it is sovereignty.
Mm.
And it's about, you only lean as far as if the other person fell, you could recover yourself. And so it's about like, yeah, absolutely. We are going to benefit from supports that are coming towards us. We're going to receive support, all different kinds, more than we can imagine right now, more than is being revealed, and from a variety of sources. Again, diversity, right? Not putting all your eggs in that basket.
One of the cards I just pulled. Spiritual support right here.
Spiritual support.
You said all the support. It's showing us it's already there.
It's
Tune
already
in,
there.
tap in.
And that we will actually like not lean into any one thing to the point where we lose our own grounding. So it's about like we will stay strong in ourselves and look for a variety, a diversity of supports, and also be very gracious to receive what is coming. So it's just like knowing that we're going to not just survive all of this, but actually become phenomenally strong and self-resourced and independent, what sovereignty actually means, right?
And I just wanted to specify for this card, I just pulled it now for Karen, but I want to say, Lorna, this card came up before. It just didn't get into every single card that I pulled before. So
Okay.
twice in a row, after shuffling and clearing the deck, both times. So that's why I felt, wow, this is, and then Ashala said the support, and I'm like, yes, we're getting that message hammered for us. The support is there. We get those reminders. Just ask, keep tuning in, even if it feels like unanswered prayers, they're not. We just don't always see what that answer is, not immediately anyway. So.
All right, 3 cards on the news. Whoa. Oh, whoa. Okay.
Temperance showing up again.
Temperance showing up again. Let's see if I can, put it that way a little bit. Wow. 2 major arcana. So we're in the driver's seat. Major arcana is like the spiritual, it's the inside job. It's we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's things coming into balance. So I've been saying this for a really long time. You know, we each have our own quotient of what amount of stimulus, news, frequency, challenge, perspective lights us up, gets us into gear, puts us into abundance mode, puts us into productivity. Because this is abundance, the Empress. Again, it's abundance and also diversity. And then this potential future is productivity. So how do we interpret productively? It's interesting. Use the word productively, interpret the crazy events going on in today's news. Well, you basically tune in to the point where you're at that juncture of, okay, now it's just either making me mad, making me sad, making me scared. If it's going into, it's disempowering you and taking you down a negative space, stop. Just stop. Back away from whatever that is. So you're engaging with the news. I am not saying go put your head in the sand and don't pay attention. You're following what you're guided to look at. And if it starts to make you feel uncomfortable, like, no, I don't like this, it's making me mad, sad, angry, scared, then that isn't what, there's going to be a version of the news that's going to put a spin on things. It's not just about giving you hope. It's about like it lines up with your destiny. It lines up. It like, it literally, scratches that itch for you. You're like, yeah, that's the piece. Have you ever had that with information? You get a piece of information, you're like, oh my God. Now all these pieces are falling into place. It feels so good. Now I know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to reformat my perspective on that. Stay with that. And if it's not functioning in that way, find a different perspective news source. Find something that gives you that feeling of, yeah, this is good. I can work with this. And then look for ways to start materializing that productively. What are you going to do with that information? You may want to start to challenge yourself a little bit, like, okay, I'm going to take one step towards actualizing, as Anita pulled earlier, solutions around that. What can I do in my life? What practical little things can I do to direct myself towards the better version of whatever that news is? So it's, you know what, there's no easy answer to this. There's no swords here. There's no ultimate truth. Each of us has our own destiny with the information that's coming. And we've never been in a position where we've had this much information access, right? As a humanity. So what is useful? What can you do something with? And what helps you feel more aligned with your unique destiny? What gives you that feeling of, like I said, that those moments where you're like, oh, this news answers something. It illuminates something for me. It helps me feel like I'm on the right track. And if it doesn't, it might not even be that the news is bad. It just might not be the right time for you to integrate that news. So just steer away for a while. Yeah. What did you pull on it, Anita?
Well, aside from the spiritual support, so that just is feeling like, trusting in a greater picture. I do feel like there's, over the last few years, every time I see something in mainstream that I'm like, oh, that's a little bit of truth, I get so excited. And now that's tempered a little bit because there doesn't seem to be any greater response. Stories don't get picked up. And I do feel like we want to call it, in the big picture, white hats in control, and they're just doing tester sprinkles and then see what shakes out, because they don't want the masses to lose their minds with too much at once. And literally, it won't even be seen initially for so many. That's why it's sprinkle, sprinkle. Is there a fallout? A little bit of fallout. Okay, good. So then we've done a little bit of energy shifting work. Then we'll sprinkle a little bit more. And if there's like nothing, then that's like, okay, like people will literally look past a news story, or that doesn't indicate me, or I don't think that's real. Like it feels like there's processes that need to be gone through for people who are, especially newsies, who have to watch their 6 o'clock news every day. Still, I know you can get it everywhere all the time now, but it's feels like it's still that old system needing to be just sprinkled through.
Yeah.
And interesting that I pulled King of Cups, King of Raphael here, because literally on the cards it says it's safe to trust. And it's not, I'm not seeing that as like trust the news, but it trusts you.
Yeah.
Yourself. We're building our own inner trust back up, because our trust has been broken a million ways, sideways and all ways. So it's like, let's figure out how to trust our intuition again. And so
That's it.
that we can have that discernment when things come our way. It's like, that, and even with what Ashala was saying, right? That it's almost like different news for different people. What are you getting triggered? Are you staying calm? Is this something you need? Because when we're triggered, that's a message to ourselves to deal with it. If you know something not to be true that you're seeing getting reported on, it shouldn't be triggering. It should just be like, oh, it's too bad that I don't see truth there. But still from a
Yes.
calm place. It's not about reaction. It's like, oh, okay. So they're still working on bringing more alignment for all of us so that we can see more, Or as
Mhm.
Socrates would say, it's all there, we just need to remember it. And that feels like a
Mhm.
lot of what is coming through, is that we just are, that's the pulling back of the veils. There's lots of different languaging around it, but
Mhm.
when if all the information is there, we're just remembering. So even and with what you were saying, Ashala, all the information that we have, I don't know if we've never had this much information in humanity. If we really go big picture, maybe
Mhm.
in this lane, but if we get
Yes.
into ancient societies, maybe to
Yes.
Tartaria or, you
Yes.
know, those old stories, well, there's a lot of things that are going to be revealed or remembered
Mhm.
through what we're going through now. And we're really creating the strong, sovereign vessels to hold this energy as it comes through.
Such a good point, Anita. Thank you for that. And like when you speak about these ancient civilizations, that to me, what distinguishes the type of information we have now is that it is disconnected, heart,
Mm,
gut, and head.
mm,
So we are still processing information, like in that almost more like the 3D model of like taking in data and putting it through the brain.
mm,
And
mhm,
then, when we have a reaction with our heart or our gut, we're like surprised. We're like, oh no, something, maybe that's not true. Or maybe, it's like, so what feels to me like, yes, I believe in other civilizations, there's been more of an integrated information connection of vast knowledge,
mm,
universal cosmic knowledge,
mm, mhm,
that was filtered through. It wasn't. It came in such a almost pure way that it was aligned with heart, gut, and head.
mm,
So in a way, what you're saying, when you pull that King of Cups,
mm,
is that and trusting ourselves. It's like we are trying to find our way back into receiving information that aligns with all of our bodies.
mm,
And
mhm,
so in that way, that's where we differ individually. Like
mhm,
something that's triggering to you, Anita, might not be triggering to me, and vice versa. And we're both highly intelligent, very awake people with a lot of conscious evolution under our belts and self development, but we have our own individual, um, like template of how we work with the information filtering through all our bodies, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual, and then finally our physical. So
mm,
it feels to me like I love this question, Karen, about how can we engage with it productively?
mm,
Like that's a clue right there. If it puts you in productivity mode, if it makes you want to do something, then you're right on for you for now. This is good for you for now. And you're filtering it through the wisdom of your own heart.
mm,
So that will guide you. That's that trust that Anita's speaking about. Your heart will guide you
mm,
to, it isn't about what's true or not true. It's about what's good for you to be aware of right now and trust that. Because look at and I love what Anita said earlier too about look what we've gone through.
mm,
Just cast your mind back, say 3 or 4 years, and some of what you've absorbed and integrated and made part of your worldview and your reality that gives you a lot of strength and purpose and motivation to do things. And how would you have dealt with that information 5 years ago?
mm,
Like you think we are growing and evolving so quickly.
mm,
So really trust, you've come this far and you're asking these questions. That means you're in a proactive phase of, I want to do something about this. Look at all the information you've already processed and integrated through your heart, through your gut, and through your head.
mm,
So notice how well we've done.
mm.
And if we can do that, some of you have done that just in a few short years, there's hope for all of humanity to do that as well.
Love it.
Love
Beautiful, Ashala. Beautiful.
and off on. I'm just going to go through here. If there's anything else. Yeah, I think this is good.
So I'll just share one more card that connects.
Yes,
I don't think I've
please.
ever pulled this card before. So, and I just
Wow.
thought, yeah, so beautiful that just with what everything that you just said here, it's a lovely image, but it's
Hold it up a little higher. Little,
yeah,
yeah.
Mother, Father, Gaia, or God. Sorry, Mother, Father, God, Gaia. I was
Wow.
looking at the like standing on the earth there, and it really felt like
Yeah.
connections to through ourselves, through the universe, through our sovereign being, chakras
Mhm.
aligned, just it
Mhm.
it just is feeling like very powerful and reclamation, like you were saying, of our past energy that we might have given up over time.
So, so lovely. And right on the eve of our Mother's Day celebration,
Mhm.
which to me it is about obviously our earthly mothers, but it's also about our relationship to our earth mother. And
Mhm.
finally, it's our relationship to the archetype of mother, which is about care, nurturing, guidance, wisdom, looking at things from a broad perspective, whole brain, multitasking, diverse approach to life, not just this single minded, linear, academic way of analyzing things. So take that energy of, as Anita pointed out, mother, father, God into your week. And we're at 11:11 again. Let's
Oh my goodness.
time out. See you all next week. Have a beautiful week, everyone.